him. Time has no meaning. Your pain will... Revolting! I shall fly.
It's so brittle.
You...
At least die with some flair. Handle this! Grab your volcanic tightly. Time to up the stakes. Twin terrors! Resist the assault! A glorious spectacle! Another round will commence as soon as I have more combatants.
Alright, so this is my life stacking explosive trap of Shrapnel Scion. This is probably the best build I've ever played in Path of Exile. It's done all content in the game pretty easily. I've almost finished my challenges with it. I just need to do some ultimatum. I've done all 7 Ubers on this character. I've also done, I don't know where the challenge is, but I've done Wave 30 Simulacrum with this build too. And here's how it works. So the core of the build is Wrathpith Globe. This item gives 5% spell damage and 5% spell crit chance per 100 maximum life. I'm sitting at around 11,000 maximum life, so this shield is giving me around 550 spell damage and spell crit. The downside is that every time you use or trigger a spell skill, you sacrifice 10% of your life. So you see if I throw out some flammabilities, my life goes down. And to offset that, we are using Dissolution of the Flesh. This jewel removes all energy shield, gives you 30% more maximum life, and changes the way you lose life from taking damage. So instead of your actual life value, and right now it's 6,207, instead of that going down when you take damage, it instead reserves life, which starts from the top no matter what. We're using that in combination with Eternal Youth, which makes energy shield recharge instead applied to my life. And that basically just means that now I can use my life as a resource and not care about what the actual value is. You'll notice that I'm always on low life, and this is because I'm using Petrified Blood, and thanks to Dissolution we can use this with pretty much no downside. And we can also spec into Pain Attunement for 30% more spell damage. Petrified Blood in particular has an interesting interaction with Dissolution of the Flesh, where the line that says, when taking damage from hits, 40% of life lost below half-life is prevented, then a percentage of life lost prevented this way is lost over 4 seconds. This is essentially 40% damage reduction, with the downside of you only have half of your life. However, with Dissolution, the life reservation starts from the top of your life, so you basically have 1.5 life bars. You can look on the wiki page for Dissolution of Flesh for more information about this interaction, because I'm going to be honest, I don't entirely understand it, but it seems to work. One thing to note about Petrified Blood is that the life loss over time, 99% of the time, it's offset by Eternal Youth, but you see, if I'm like spamming skills like this, you can see my life actually does get low enough that the life loss over time can kill me. So to offset that, I have to spec some recoup here. The skill I'm using is Explosive Trap of Shrapnel, a transfigured version of Explosive Trap that has more base damage, more damage effectiveness, and a larger area. This league, a lot of skill gem qualities got changed because of the removal of alternate qualities, and Explosive Trap and all of its transfigured versions, their quality provides an additional smaller explosion per 10 quality. We are using this in combination with Ashes of the Stars, so you can see my Explosive Trap of Shrapnel causes 15 smaller explosions, as opposed to the base 8 plus 2 quality at level 21. PoB says there is a 100% overlap chance for these secondary explosions with the larger area from the skill. I'm not sure if that's entirely correct, but it seems to be mostly correct. It might just be that because of the smaller explosions having randomly between 30% reduced and increased base radius. Either way, single target, this skill does a lot of damage. Onto Ascendancy choice, I'm a Scion. We are taking Chieftain for Covered in Ash, unaffected by Ignite, and 10% increased strength. To note, we are stacking strength as well. For 1 life per 2 strength, I'm at 1,000 strength. Unaffected by Ignite is pretty much mandatory for a Dissolution build. I'll explain that later. And we are also taking Avatar Fire for easy full fire conversion in our explosive trap. I'm also an Elementalist for extra exposure effect. From here, the only holes, so to speak, in our build's offenses are crit multi and trap throwing speed. These two are both solved through use of the Adorned Jewel and Slave Driver's Hand. So the Adorned is a new jewel that provides up to 150% increased effect of jewel socket passives containing corrupted magic jewels. And you'll see I have quite a few jewel sockets. This one has life crit multi, trap throwing speed crit multi, life crit multi, life, trap throwing speed crit multi, life crit multi, more crit multi, trap throwing speed. My tree, other than that, is just specking a bunch of life, some strength, some charge stuff, and some trap stuff. My Wildwood Ascendancy is a Primalist. I have a jewel for Adrenaline, which I'll go into in a second. I have a jewel for Strength, Extra Exposure, and Strength. Crit chance if you haven't dealt a crit recently. Now this is up pretty much 100% of the time if you're a trap build, because technically it's the traps that are doing the crits. The only skill I have that can crit occasionally is Flame Dash, and I have that linked to Controlled Destruction. Now the Adrenaline Charm. When I was first planning this build, I was thinking I'm a Dissolution build, I'm not going to be reaching low life all the time, right? But in reality, you can see when I cast, I'm not gaining Adrenaline. That's because I'm not technically reaching low life, because Petrified Blood doesn't let me go above low life. Except life recovery other than flasks cannot recover life to above low life. So, I'm using a Mage Blood, I have 4 magic flasks. The 5th flask slot is pretty much free. There's not really any unique flasks that I can use that's that worth, so I just use a life flask with reduced charges per use and immunity to hinder and maim. So you can see if I use my life flask, my life goes above low life, and then if I cast a bit, I go below life and I gain Adrenaline. Now this is admittedly a little clunky. It's pretty easy to keep up while mapping, you just shield charge around, press your life flask every once in a while. But while bossing, I usually forget to put it on, but it's okay because I have enough damage without it. Now onto my gear. As I mentioned before, I'm stacking Strength, which lets me use a Blunderbore with a perfect double corrupt. This chest is pretty good. It gives me a permanent, lesser, brutal, and massive shrine. These are giving me some damage, some knockback, Rip Bozo, and some life and some AoE. My helmet is a rare helmet with life, strength, and some res cap, as well as some fizz taken as, because this build has little to no fizz mitigation. An alternative helmet you can use is just a normal gull with a power charge corrupt. That's what I was using before. My amulet is Ashes. I think I forgot to mention that when I was talking about the quality, but yeah, that gives me 3 additional smaller explosions for my explosive trap. My scepter is pretty basic. I don't even really need the +1. Like, my explosive trap is already level 32 and gem level scaling starts to fall off after level 30, but the most important mod is the Fizz's Extra Fire. These are pretty hard to craft, so I just bought one with these prefixes and multi-modded. Again, Slave Driver's Hand, which makes cast speed also apply to trap throwing speed, and I have some cast speed here, some cast speed on a Mage Blood Flask, and cast speed on my rings, which also have Strength, Life, Chaos Res, and this one also has a Fractured Essence mod for Physics Extra Fire. Not super necessary, these bases are pretty much non-existent. And finally, my boots have Strength and Abyssal Socket, Life, Cannot Be Poisoned, and Movement Speed Avoid Chill. These suffixes are pretty easy to craft if you start with a Fracture. It's Glyphic and Hollow Fossil, and it takes about average 4 attempts, I think. And then prefixes are just Eldritch Currency. My shield is again Wrathpith, and finally I have a Mage Blood. And finally my Abyss Jewel is just some life and crit multi, and a bit of fizz to spells, but that doesn't really do anything, to be honest. So yeah, that's the overview of the build. It is worth noting that it does have a quite unique playstyle. First of all, I know that the trap playstyle is not for everyone, so if you don't like traps, then you probably won't like this build. The other thing is dissolution. So again, when you take damage, it instead reserves your life until you take no damage for 2 seconds. So this build is actually quite tanky with 10k life. I have triple LE flasks with Mage Blood, but it's not the same kind of tanky as like a leech or regen based build. You can't stand there face tanking something while attacking because you'll just die. You have to run around and find a period of 2 seconds where you don't take any damage. It definitely takes some getting used to, but considering that this character was my first character to level 100, self-grinded, I'd say it's pretty good. But yeah, because of that, this build isn't great at certain content like Delirium, where you take a lot of small hits a lot of the time. For example, Simulacrum, I did manage to do a wave 30, but it was not easy, right? It's really hard to find a 2-second window where you don't take any damage in the middle of a Simulacrum. But thankfully, the damage managed to carry me through.